afternoon, everyone. No mai haere mai. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. It is lovely to see you all here to have a bit of a chat about meetings that matter. If you're here, you are clearly either a bit of a nerd and like to spend your lunchtime talking about work. You're in good company. You might be absolutely sick to death of crappy meetings and thought perhaps this would give you a bit of a leg up to figure out how to make them less crap. Or you might be a facilitator or a leader who's in charge of leading important conversations, or you might be a lurker, and that's okay with me. You are all welcome here. So welcome everyone, it is great to have you. Let's jump straight in the chat. Where are you dialing in from? Let's see the locations we've got represented on our webinar this afternoon. Where are you all from?
Melbourne.
Oh, nice. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. We've got Wairarapa, Sydney, Australia, Auckland, Wellington, Rotorua, Sydney, Wellington, Nelson. Oh my goodness, we're all over the place. It's nice to have some of our Australian friends with us. Hello. It's great to have you. I know it's a bit earlier where you are. Here, I imagine that half of us are eating a sandwich over our desk while they're part of today's webinar, and that is okay with me. So for those of you that I'm a new face for, hello, kia ora, I'm Alicia Mackay, and I like to talk shit for a living, and it's working out. How good is that? More seriously though, I do a lot of strategy work, and what that's meant over the last decade is that I've spent the bulk of my time with rooms of people, and what that's meant over the last 3 or 4 months is that I've actually spent a lot of time with virtual rooms of people, talking about how we might plan for the future, how we might make tricky decisions when things keep changing. But I think it's worth saying right at the outset, I'm sure you've all seen the hashtag not all men. This is a bit hashtag not all meetings, because not all meetings matter. Not all of them do. In fact, many of them don't. I think we have far too many meetings in our life. Let's get a hand up in the gallery for those of you who feel like they're currently involved in too many meetings. Stick your hand up. All right, that's pretty much all of us. Me too. To extend the metaphor, me too. I'm in far too many meetings, and I think that makes it really hard for those of us who have the job of running meetings that do matter. Because when we spend a lot of our time in interactions with other people, that should probably be an email, that could maybe be a phone call, that could, my personal preference, be a shared document that we can all comment on our phone while we're peeing. It makes it really hard to get people's attention and to get their enthusiasm and engagement when you actually do need them in a room. So let's jump in the chat again, seeing as we've had such an excellent engagement from the outset. When do you think meetings do matter? When do we really need to bring people together? When is that important? What do you think? Interactive dialogue, nice. When you need buy-in, absolutely. When you need people to care and to support what it is that you're talking about, then you absolutely need to bring them together. When a joint decision is needed, totally. When we need to workshop ideas, collaborate, understand, agree on a common purpose, these are brilliant answers. Oh, when no one person has the answer, Anna, that's my favourite one yet. When we're hoping that all of our heads together are going to deliver an answer that we can't find yet. When we've got a lot of stakeholders involved, absolutely, Adele. When we need to create together, absolutely. When we need to build trust, that's a really important one. So there are lots of good reasons why we need to bring people together, and I think there's more of that now than there possibly ever has been. Because the kind of change that we're currently grappling with and the kind of problems that we're trying to solve, very few of the important problems and the important changes can be solved by one person and one brain. And even if they can, it is very rare that the support of one person is all that's needed to get something off the ground. So even if we feel like we've got the answer, if what we need is the support of a whole bunch of other people, either to make that real by taking action or by supporting it, then what we need to do is to be able to bring people together in a meaningful way. And those are the meetings that matter. So I often say that there are only 3 kinds of meetings that matter. They are either meetings that are for building understanding. So if we're trying to agree on, some of you here said, a common purpose or a shared understanding, that is bang on. If we need to build understanding together, that's a meeting that matters. The second kind is if we need to shape choices. So if we need to figure out what our potential courses of action are, that's a meeting that matters. Or if we need to make decisions, that's a meeting that matters. The rest of it, whether it's disseminating information, providing feedback, bringing people together, yeah, you can use meetings for those if you like. They don't quite meet our threshold. All right, seeing as we're having such an excellent result in the chat, what are your pet peeves when it comes to meetings that should matter? What do you see that you hate? Bad openings. Oh, that's not a dig. Negativity, no outcome. Yeah, oh my God. Okay, Joe, speaking my language, that is my pet peeve, right? When you've had this great chat and you've all left and you've used 600 post-it notes and nothing actually happens afterwards. When everyone just follows the leaders, says Kate, so there's not genuine engagement and listening. Off-track waffle. People on their phones, oh my God, multitasking. I read a statistic the other day that said 92% of people multitask in meetings. 92% of people. I guarantee you there are at least 4 people in this meeting right now who are checking another browser or a text message. You can't help it. This is the world we live in. Distracted conversation. An agenda that's too big for the time available. I really like that one, Anna. That one's really hard. I had a meeting this morning with a new potential client, and they said, Alicia, we need you to come and facilitate this great meeting, and it's really exciting. It's different people in different countries over a long period of time all coming together on Zoom. It's a really cool one. And they said, we've actually got an agenda, so we just need a facilitator. Can we share that with you? And I said, yeah, let's have a look. And so they shared their screen and they chucked their agenda up. And over 2 days, 2 full days on Zoom, I might add, over 2 days, they had, I reckon, about 12 different exercises. And they were like, what we're going to do is we're going to set our annual plan, and we're also going to bring people together, and we're also going to come up with a couple of answers to some of our tricky problems. And we're also going to try and reframe, how we make decisions and bring them together as leaders. And we're also going to have some offline time and some online time, and then we'll agree actions, and then we'll have the objectives done, and then everyone will leave with an individual action plan. And I just went, whoa, yeah, you can't do that. you can't do that. It's just too much. And when we walk in with these massive expectations that we're going to have a white knight workshop, has anyone ever been put your hand up if you've been in a white knight workshop that's going to solve all the problems today? Yeah. When we're in a white knight workshop, we set ourselves up to fail. So Adele's saying, actually, you feel exhausted before you've started. Yeah, I felt exhausted looking at the agenda, mate. I just sort of looked at it and went, oh, I'm tired just thinking about it. Karen hates rude people who talk over the top of others or belittle others or who don't include others when they speak. Yeah, so what tends to happen, particularly when you're in an environment with a bunch of leaders or a bunch of subject matter experts, is that you've got maybe 4 or 5 voices that like to dominate the conversation. And if it's a group that has come together before, you end up with this sort of precedent that gets established, don't you? Where we know who they are. Like, if the facilitator or the presenter asks the question, you know who's going to put their hand up. And then the person stands up or goes, well, in my experience, and I see the body language of everyone go, ugh, when this person gets up to speak, because we just know. So those are the people that, even if they're not being rude, we can be fairly confident that their input is going to be captured. And so finding a way to gather really meaningful and diverse input from the people that aren't speaking, who probably have some really good stuff to say, is the job of the facilitator, is to be able to capture that input. So that's a really good point. Martine hates going over and over the same thing in different words by different people. Do you sometimes find, Martine, that happens because if we're thinking about those super engagers, the ones we always hear from, they can't bear to not have had their voice heard? So even though they're actually saying the same thing that someone else has said, they have to say it their way so everyone knows how clever they are and how much they know. Yeah. Jeff says the ones who need to change the most often bring the most negativity to the meeting. I think that's a good observation. And I actually think we need to be quite respectful sometimes of our cynics and our detractors and our negative people, because they tend to be coming in like that for a reason. So either they've been burned before, so they're often people who've worked in that environment or in that workplace for some time, right? And they're walking in going, here we go again, another one of these. And it's either I'm going to ride this out because this is not my first rodeo and the last few didn't go anywhere, so I'll just ride this one out. Or they feel as though their group or their interests aren't being adequately accounted for. Or they think that the course of action that things are heading toward isn't the right option for a bunch of reasons. And actually, if those are the people who are important to bring along when it comes to actually changing behaviour, so you need them on your side, we can't just shut those people down. And you want to, right? You want to be like, oh God, here we go, negative Nancy walking in with the arm crossing and the foot up on the chair and all the negative comments. But what I do find is that if people have enough energy to be negative, they have some investment. And that's not a bad thing. So if you're engaged enough to be pissed off, great, that can be harnessed. And if you can convert your detractors and your cynics, they often become your biggest supporters. But you do have to understand what's fueling that negativity in the first place. And honestly, 8 times out of 10, it's something worth thinking about. The other 20% of the time, they're just assholes, but what can you do? But I reckon 80% of the time, if someone's really negative on something, A, it's great that they're engaged, but B, there's probably something you need to be accounting for there. And if they think it, they're not the only ones. Because what makes a meeting that matters, is that it's a strategic conversation that drives some kind of change. Yeah? So a meeting that matters is not just about what happens in the room. It's about creating some momentum or some force so that the people who are involved change something after they leave. And if that's what we're trying to do, then we can't just leave people out in the cold. So it's really important to capture that input. So yeah, look, but those are great. What else have we got here? Going off topic. Yeah, so that's really easy to do. The stats on that are horrific too. Something like 50 or 60% of meetings go off track to the point where you use less than a third of your meeting time for the intended purpose. So if you bring people together for an hour, odds are that you maybe spend, 15 or 20 minutes actually in a focused conversation about the point. And that the rest of it is stuff that could have been dealt with by really good information beforehand, so some good prep work, or it's other unacknowledged issues that don't have their own dedicated space, and therefore they start leaking into the meetings that should be for something else. Or we're just not very good at being focused and we let people overtake. And so all of those things lead to us wasting 2/3 of our time together talking about things that aren't actually relevant. And of course, why that's a problem is that it doesn't just hold us back from progress in whatever it was we came together to workshop or to talk about, but it actually leaves people feeling cynical and disengaged. So they leave feeling worse than what they came in feeling like. And that's a really negative outcome. So it's really important that we do these well. We've got curlier challenges than we used to. We're expected to make decisions more collaboratively than we used to have to. So the old hero model, the old dictator leader model is it's going out. It's no longer the way. So even if you don't believe in it, there is an expectation that we make decisions together collaboratively. And if you're in an environment where actually you've got no option, you just do have a bunch of stakeholders, which I expect is most of us, even if that's just internally, then it is really important that we've got the skills to do that well, and to do that in a way that honours and respects people's time, so they don't leave going, great, another meeting that should have been an email, or another waste of 2 hours of my life that killed a few trees but got us nowhere. So I think this stuff really matters, and it's important that we start to do it well and start to recognise what the behaviours are that actually get in the way. So the way I sort of like to think about this, and I'm going to break one of my own rules, and I'm actually going to share my screen with you. Now, anyone who has sat through a session with me before around meetings knows that I've got some views about the overuse of slides. Death by PowerPoint is real, man. It is a problem. Type yes in the chat if you've ever sat through a presentation or a workshop where you've watched someone read paragraphs of text off a slide. Just type yes in the chat if you've watched that happen. Okay, that was fast. It's just awful, isn't it? And so I've been so vocal about my distaste for that kind of PowerPoint slides that I just said to my partner this morning, I said, I'm going to use a slide in my webinar today because I think it's going to be useful. And I feel really guilty about it. Like, I think it's genuinely the most useful way to show this information, but I feel quite guilty for putting one up because I've been so mean about everybody using slides. So I promise you I'm not going to put up a 500-word paragraph and read it in a monotone because, good God, I think we get enough of that. But I do think there are some useful distinctions that we can make between different kinds of meetings. And I think the absolute worst kind of meeting is a toxic meeting. And I hope that not many of you actually have to engage in these ones. Because in a toxic meeting, not only are you not getting anything done, you're actually going backwards, right? So people are coming in disaffected, disenchanted, and negative. And it's not the couple of people, that is the underlying feeling in the room. And the reason that tends to happen, I think, is because of a lack of trust. So when you work with a group of people who don't trust each other, that's when it dissolves into conflict. And I'm not even necessarily talking about the kind of conflict that's visible and shouty, because you can work with visible shouty conflict. I think the more damaging kind is the unspoken, invisible tension that prevents people from coming together and trusting each other to make decisions. So I often talk about how every meeting is actually 4. So the first meeting is the pre-meeting. It's the conversations people have before they go in to prepare what they're going to say or to have their chat. And then there's the meeting that actually happens physically between the people in the room. The third meeting happens in your own head, and it's all the stuff that people are saying, but they're not actually, that they're thinking, but they're not actually saying. And then the fourth meeting, which is usually the best one, my favourite one, is the after meeting. So it's the chat you have on the way to the lift or in the coffee afterwards, or the little email debrief like, oh my God, what did you think about that? And so the goal of a good meeting is to try and meld those 4 together as much as possible. But in a toxic meeting, most of your meeting is happening in one of those other 3 areas, not in the room. So I think that's tough. And I think what we want to do there is build trust. But then I think probably the more common variety is the tedious meeting. And so this is the boring talk fest where you don't really make any progress. You're going around in circles. It's all the things you guys have been saying, right? It's long agendas that you don't actually get through. It's things that don't turn into action. And that leaves people feeling frustrated. They leave thinking, for God's sake, I have stuff to do. I now can't do it because I just sacrificed 90 minutes of my life to that. And it was a waste of my time. And so that leads to frustration. And what we want there is actually a sense of purpose. So we want better clarity about the reason that we've come together in the first place. And we want that shared understanding together about what we need out at the end, right? So what we're lacking in a toxic meeting is trust. In a tedious meeting, we've got a bit of trust, but what we're actually lacking is purpose. So before we can even start to have a conversation about how we have a meeting that matters, about how we have a meeting that helps us to build understanding or to shape choices or to make decisions, we need to make sure we're not down here, right? That we have the trust, that psychological safety for people to contribute, and that we genuinely have a sense of purpose for why we're together in the first place. Because if we don't do that, not only do we not engage people, we're actually leaving it worse than we found it. We are disengaging people, and that's really problematic. So our first step is really to make sure that we're not stuck down there. But as we start to track up, we move into that building understanding space. And those are the kind of meetings I call talk fests. And that's kind of pejorative, isn't it? Like a talk fest sounds like a bad thing, and it isn't necessarily. So I think when I talk about a workshop needing to be a strategic conversation that drives change, the mistake that we can make there is to think that we need to do everything quickly. And that's what leads to those overloaded agendas that we were talking about before, where we're like, right, well, we're just going to figure it out, and then we're going to shape up our options, and then we're going to decide what we're going to do and have an implementation plan. And we'll do that all by lunchtime. And when we rush through at that pace, and like I have that temptation too, if you're a fast thinker and you're action oriented and you're a doer, like you're wondering why everyone else is taking so long, right? You're just thinking, why can't we get shit done? But actually talk fests have a really important role to play if we want to make sure that we've captured all of our perspectives, that we haven't settled on a frame of understanding or a path too early, that we're actually taking the space and the time to do the divergent thinking. Because if we think about our strategic thinking muscles, you know that we can diverge, which is where we think broadly and have new ideas and we generate together, and we can converge, which is where we start narrowing down our potential options and starting to come to a decision. But we can't get to that convergent stage unless we've put the legwork in. And so it's kind of like that whole slingshot effect. We've got to pull back slowly in order to leap forward quickly. And when we do a good job of building understanding at the outset, we create a foundation that we then don't have to go and relitigate, because there aren't people feeling as though they've been left out at the outset, and that's really important. So in a talk fest, we get understanding, but what we need to move forward is focus. So we've got purpose, we know why we're there, we've taken the time and the space to meaningfully explore what's going on, how we could think differently, make sure that we've captured the right diverse range of different perspectives on something, and that we haven't settled on the way we always think about this or the way we always do this. But if we want to track forward from there, we really need some clear focus. So that's where we need to start stripping things away and going, all right, but if we accept that all of this stuff is going on and that there are 40 different ways that we can think about it, where can we have the most impact or influence? What do we need to start narrowing down to or converging to now for us to go ahead? And that doesn't mean disrespecting or dishonoring the breadth and quality of the conversation you've had to that point. So it's a matter of being able to go, man, all this stuff is really important, but I know that you guys are just as busy as I am, and that together we need to make sure we're channeling. So what is it that we're going to settle on to do now? What piece are we using? And that's our focus. The other thing I really want to say at this point before we go on to the next stage is that every meeting should only have one job. So the example that I just gave about the client that I met with this morning, who had their beautifully enthusiastic and ambitious 2-day agenda of all the things they were going to do, is every meeting can only have one job, either to build understanding or to shape choices or to make decisions, but you can't jam them together. And if you're tempted to do that, you actually need to separate it out. And whether that's as simple as a morning and an afternoon session, or putting a week in between, or finding a way to demarcate that space, it's really important. Because if we haven't got that clarity of purpose, we don't give things enough time and space, and people get confused about what it is that they do when they leave. So it's really hard to get that call to action because you don't know what you landed on. So one job, one meeting, one job. In fact, if you leave with nothing else today, one meeting, one job. All right, so in a talk fest, we've built some understanding, and now we need some focus. And when we move on from there, we get to what I call the teaser. And unfortunately, like really sadly, often this is where workshop processes or strategy and change processes or decision processes really good ones, this is often where they get stuck. So they've managed to overcome the sense of inertia or disengagement that that leads to just staying at TalkFest, right? We've gone beyond just using 500 post-it notes. We have got some understanding, we have got some focus, and when we're really lucky, we get to the point of agreement. So that's our shaping choice meeting. And at this point, we've got everybody agreed on what needs to happen. But sometimes it stays there. Just check in the chat really quickly if you've ever been part of a process where you can't quite understand what went wrong. Like everybody seemed to be nodding their heads and you felt like you'd landed on what your plan was for the year or what your course of action was that you were going to take. But for some reason, nothing happened. Has that happened to anybody here? Yeah. So this one's really sad to me because it's like you've done all the right things. So why aren't we getting anywhere? Why do we keep having the same conversation every 3 months? I don't understand it. We've come so far. And I think what we need here is commitment. And that's the lacking ingredient. When we've got as far as actually shaping up what it is we're going to do, we haven't really got the commitment of the people in the room to actually turn it into something actionable. Because in the same way that when we're in sales and we want to convert leads or we want to convert people to buy from us, convincing them that the product is good or the service is good isn't actually enough. The threshold to buy is actually quite high, and the same is true for ideas. The threshold to buy is much higher than we think it is, and the level of engagement and commitment that we need from people to have them not just commit in the room, but actually be confident in selling our thinking outside of the room to others and actually putting on the line their own time and their money and their reputation and their effort and their energy. Of course the threshold is high for that. People are busy, they've got stuff to do. And if we haven't actually created the sense of commitment that we need to push people over that threshold, we stay at the agreement point. And then we just get together every 3 months and nod about how good it is that we're going to do this. And then we never do. But my favorite kind of meeting, my favorite one is the transformational meeting. And that's where we've tipped over that threshold from agreement into action. So we've got genuine commitment from people, and we're actually coming together to discuss what we're doing and what we have been doing and what we need to tweak going forward and how our indicators are looking. And it's from there that we just need momentum. We actually need to create a cadence, a sense of support and excitement and momentum that just keeps people doing what they're supposed to do. They're coming together to go, yep, well, since our last meeting, I did what we said, and I've gone and engaged this person to do that, and we've actually tweaked 2 things in our team, and we've actually shut a project down to make space for it, and it's great. And your job there is to create a sense of momentum. And those are really exciting ones, but we don't get there unless we've done the hard work at the outset to bring people together in a trusting environment around a clear purpose that they can buy into. Unless we've taken the time to actually build meaningful understanding and settle on a focus and deliver on genuine agreement that people are committed to, then they can take action and then we can get there. And the temptation in a constrained, busy, overwhelmed, fast-moving environment is to try and cheat our way all the way to the top and think that we can shortcut it and that we can get there quickly. And often that's not true. But what I do find is that when we do dedicate enough time to those initial steps, and we really we go, you know what, that's all for today. That's our landing point for today. And next time we're going to pick it up again, and we're going to play a game and go, what if we had half the money? And next time we're going to pick it up again and go, what if we had twice the time? And next time we're going to pick it up and go, what if we were in a different industry? When you create the space for that kind of generative, explorative thinking, when you do get to the point that you need to be making decisions together, you've got such clarity about what really matters, and you've done the hard work to canvas the rest of it, that it does come together significantly faster than you think, and then action actually happens. And so when we rush through, but we expect people to just go ahead and do things and they never do them, we can't find out why, the answer is usually about 3 steps back. Does that resonate with anybody, looking at that kind of collection of the staggered version of meetings that matter? No, I'm just seeing Kim's comment there that often what happens is that there's something stuck in people's heads that hasn't been voiced. Yeah, so they weren't really as present as it seemed because we didn't capture that particular perspective, and either they didn't have the confidence and support to voice that, or they didn't have the opportunity to. It creates this kind of internal hurdle that means they can't meaningfully commit. So even if you've got to what looks like agreement, you're at that teaser point, it's not real. The commitment's not there because we haven't unearthed what wasn't said. So often in an early workshop with a new team, we'll play the elephants game, where we just try and dig up elephants, and you get more points for the bigger the elephant. So if you say it out loud and people squirm but also nod, then we go, oh good, we got a good one, because no one's talking about that restructure, aren't they? Because they're still feeling scared about their jobs. I'm glad you brought that one up. And everyone goes, because it's come out. And it's just a matter of digging it up in the first place, and it can be quite hard to do. Anna's saying the wicked problems can resurface periodically like this. Yeah, and that's that relitigating thing, isn't it? Like we never really put it to bed. So every time we come together to talk about something else, we'll really talk about the first thing. We have a line in my house that says, it's never about the dishes. So when you're having an argument about the dishes, it's never really about the dishes, is it? There's something else you're actually arguing about. It's the same thing you've been arguing about for 3 years and you haven't solved that. And today it will be about the dishes. I like, Juliet, really helpful that you can observe, right, I love that. So you can observe what it is that you're currently getting and figure out what to dial up. Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you're sensing frustration, that's oh, hang on a minute. I don't think we're all clear exactly why we're here. There is an expectation misalignment. There's a mismatch between what we think we're here for and what we're getting. So we need to regroup and go, hang on, all right, let's just bring this back on track. Can we just get really quickly everybody to just spin around and say, what is the one thing you're hoping to leave with today? Or what was it that attracted you to come in? Because it's a good idea to do that at the framing point, but it's just as useful to check in on that as you move through and make sure that we're all on the same page. Because there's nothing worse than walking out of something thinking, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. It feels like a waste of time. But if you're observing that there's agreement, but that nobody's coming back with a status update, or nobody's actually putting their money where their mouth is, then you know that you need to dial up on commitment and you need to work out what the barriers are to enable people to do that. And I think the point that's worth making there is that we tend to think of decision processes as being quite linear. So you go from this step to this step to that step. First you build understanding, then you shape choices, then you make a decision, question mark, profit. And the reality of a good decision process that relates to particularly something important, like, I don't know, the future of your organization, it actually tends to be a bit more iterative and loopy. So if you were going to draw it, you'd be like, well, we got to here, but then we realized that we missed something at the outset. So we bounced back, addressed that, and then leapt forward again. And now we're at the decision point, and we thought we were just about there, but then somebody new started in that role. And they came in with a new perspective and said, well, in my last place, we did it like this. And we thought, shit, that's quite good. Hang on, let's give that a crack. Shape up that choice and then come back. And that's not the sign of a workshop or a decision process that's failing. That's the sign of a responsive and iterative decision process that's meaningful. And if we can be really clear about that when we set expectations to people at the start and go, man, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have all the answers. So you might, it'd be good if you do, but I certainly don't. And so I reckon that if we're all really open to actually solving the problem, not just delivering an outcome, then I reckon we might do a bit of bouncing around, and that's okay. The important thing is that we can track how far we've come from when we started, and that we can see what we're landing on. And that's not disingenuous. That's fair and open and responsive. And that is decisions done well. What have we got in the chat? Let's check in. So knowing when a meeting is important and when an email will do, totally. Knowing when you're in a meeting that should have been an email, when you're reading an email that should have been a text, when you're reading a text that shouldn't have gone to you. How to engage negative young pain in the ass. What is that negative young pain in the ass actually thinking, feeling, or afraid of? So the question for how to engage is, what do you need that you're not getting, or what are you afraid of that I'm not addressing? In fact, that's not just for young pain in the asses. That's an equal opportunity pain in the ass perspective. What are you afraid of that I'm not addressing? What do you need that you're not getting? Simon's saying what he wants to get out of today is, oh, I like this. This is meta. He's like in a meeting about meetings, talking about what he wants to get for his meetings from the meeting about meetings. As a way to refocus your time in a way that's currently sunk in back-to-back meetings. Yeah, I really like that, Simon, because what I observed, particularly during lockdown in New Zealand, was that we talked a lot about new ways of working. So we were like, oh my God, we're all doing new ways of working now. This is so great. And it was absolute bullshit, because what we did was we took our back-to-back meeting schedules that we had from the office and we put them on Zoom, except that now we didn't have to walk between meeting rooms, so you couldn't even pee. You just dialed in from one meeting to another. And I would test sometimes if I had an afternoon workshop, how many meetings people had been in that day. I had people telling me 7, 8, 10. How on earth can you contribute meaningfully to a conversation if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you've had 7 meetings that day? It is crap. And so there is a cultural thing in there that has to start from somewhere, which is actually about being quite clear, either as a team or an organization, or if you've got the mandate to in your own work life, about what actually mandates presence and how long you need to spend there is another one, Simon. So not just where should I turn up, so where can I actually provide meaningful contribution, and where will action from me be required afterwards, which is 2 really good tests for should I go to the meeting. But then how long does this need to be? So Outlook might say we need 30-minute increments, but I reckon we could wrap this up in 20 minutes. And that if we provided that challenge to people, that they'd be quite keen to get 10 minutes to grab a snack and pee in between. And so maybe we should try and do that. So having some clarity or some organizational rules or bottom lines around the threshold for a meeting is really important. And we'll get onto this one in a minute, but having clarity about what the purpose of each one is. So you shouldn't just assume you're allowed people's time. You can't just request 30 or 60 minutes of someone else's time unless you've got a compelling purpose for that. And so doing that legwork before the meeting rather than during it is really important. And if the meeting is just, hi guys, just want us to come together so I could tell you what happened at the exec meeting last week, so you're across everything. Well, that sucks. I could have read this email on the loo in 7 minutes, and now I've given up 45 minutes of my time to sit in Zoom and hear you tell me what happened. And I can see from 3 of the faces in the gallery who've just glowing with a white light that they've just opened browser windows, so they're not listening either. And here we are ruining our lives together. So a threshold for what counts as a meeting, clear purpose for what it is, and then the confidence, if you've got the permission, for a bit of pushback on whether you should be there and how long you should be there for, would be my advice for that, Simon. And also, I guess, treat others the way you want to be treated. So having that same level of accord and respect for other people's presence, because presence is really valuable. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's actually that we really need to value in-person presence, because it's not something we can take for granted. And what it takes out of someone's data, can I just pick your brain over a coffee? No, you can't pick my brain over a coffee. I'm bloody busy. And your 30-minute coffee meeting is going to turn into 50 minutes. And I'm also going to have to walk to the cafe and back. And you didn't even really tell me what you needed out of this to start with. So I couldn't do any pre-work. There's a pain in the ass. So having that respect for people's time. The bouncing around can unsettle some people. How do you deal with people who, and the decision process, Kim. So it looks like we've landed on something and now we're having an earlier chat. And how do you deal with people who don't like uncertainty? Yeah, absolutely. So that's about being really transparent about what's going on. Because what's hard about uncertainty is thinking that you are missing something, or that something is going on that you're not part of, or that you don't understand. And so making sure that you've got commitment at every point and you've got transparency around that process. So being able to say, we started here, we're now here, we've come a long way in building our understanding and shaping our options up, and we've experimented with a couple of things. And it's become clear to us now that we kind of need to jump back to launch forward. And I want us to go deep on this. I don't think that's scary, as long as it's really obvious why and what comes next. And so it's that clarity of purpose all the way through about what it's pointing to. I think in government, what can be really hard is we become focused on an end outcome that tends to be a deliverable. So it's a plan or a document or a piece of paper or a strategy. And we kind of get lost along the way and think that the purpose of our time together or our process or our workshop is to deliver that. And nobody wants that. That's no good to anybody. What people want is investment and engagement to do a new thing. And so running a multi-stakeholder process to deliver an action plan that lives as a 7-page document that never gets opened again is an absolute waste of everyone's time. So yeah, if you go faster, you'll get your 7-page action plan, but no one's going to do anything in it. So what's the actual outcome? The actual outcome is that people are committed to delivering change in that particular area. And that requires a completely different set of skills when you walk in. Anna's saying all their meetings are still online. Oh, I know, right? Here we all are. How do you effectively engage people over Zoom, especially when you're trying to do the big picture piece? Yeah, that's such a good question. And we've played around with this so much over the last 4 or 5 months. And I think bite-sized is good. So frequent and bite-sized is good. Don't stick people in there for a day or 2 days. And I know it feels like you need the time and space when you need to go large, but oh my God, sitting on Zoom for 3 or 4 hours is just such a killer. So you're better off to go, hey, we're going to come to this twice a week for 2 weeks for 2 hours than you are to say, I'm going to have you for 8 hours, right? So frequent and bite-sized is a logistical answer to that. Giving people the space, but also making sure you do a really good job of the before and after. So your time in the meeting, if you're respecting time, should only be for the collaboration stuff. All of the individual input, the pre-reading, the thinking about the issue, the doing the research, the reading, that should all happen before the meeting. And any questions that need resolving should happen after and outside of the meeting. So what we do then is we create a really neatly boxed container for collaboration in that time. And then it's as simple as bringing people in. If you've got, here's an interesting one. If you've got people that some are in the office and some aren't, what we've actually ended up doing just the last couple of weeks, because we're all learning, is you can either have one person coming in virtually to a full room, that's okay, like a talking head on the wall, or you can have individuals all dialing in separate faces, separate accounts. Where the meeting derails is when you've got 2 groups of 2 or 3, and then you've got other people individually. That's extremely hard to get people engaging and chatting naturally. So it's much easier to get a breakout room of 4 or 5 people who've all come in individually to have a really good chat with a clear question than it is to try and arrange it with some people in a room and some people not. I've found that to be a real engagement barrier. So I would highly recommend, if you've got that set up, to just say to people, I know you're in the office together, and it's bloody stupid to all sit there with our own headsets on, but we know that we're going to get the most out of this if we level the playing field. My other tip on that one for the divergent stuff, now you might have noticed, you probably didn't, earlier in this webinar that I asked you one question. I can't remember what it was now. I think it was what your pet meeting peeve was. And then I smiled like an idiot into the camera for like a solid 22 seconds waiting for you to answer. The important thing about that technique is, one, a really clear single question. So just have people know what it is they're dealing with. What do you actually want from them? What's the question you ask them? And the second one is to provide the space. Because when you're hosting one of these, the temptation is to fill all the gaps. And that doesn't give people the time to accommodate the lag and catch up and process what you asked, and then think about how they might contribute. So what I see done far too often is someone going, all right, I'm going to put everyone in breakout rooms for 10 minutes, and I want you to talk about what are the kind of challenges that we're facing at the moment. Like, what are the obstacles? Like, what are you finding getting in the way of your work? I mean, what's something you've seen in the last week? And you see there, hold on, you've asked me 4 or 5 questions. I haven't had time to process the first thing you said. And now we're all sitting in this breakout room together for 10 minutes and none of us are totally clear on what we're doing. And so the muscle it takes to be able to look right down the camera lens and go, all right, everyone, we've got 10 minutes and I want you to come back with the biggest challenge that your team is facing right now. And then just do this. and it feels like an eternity when you're on the other end. You're like, oh my God, I'm waiting for people to respond. I've been sitting here for 17 seconds. I look like a freaking idiot, but you don't. You've just given people the mental space to process what you've asked them. So there's an engagement tip for that one. Juliet saying some managers think that they need to verbally share bloody everything, so they'd rather read them. Yeah, read out your thoughts to me, please, in a collaborative environment. No, thank you. So yeah, save the face-to-face for stuff that matters, because not all meetings matter, but those that do should be treated with the respect that they deserve. So I highly believe that. All right, what do you find the hardest about facilitating meetings that matter? Just in the chat. Okay, so we've got Lisa saying she's got one annoying person that just loves workshops, wants a workshop for everything. Oh my God, I know that one. And do you have pre-workshop workshops and post-workshop workshops? And every meeting results in him assigning himself the action of arranging another workshop. Oh, all right, guys. So the landing point for this one is, yeah, I think we should bring together another group and come together on this. That one becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it? Kate says maintaining energy. Yep, totally. Not trying to do too much, says Kim. Yeah, I've had that chat already. One meeting, one job. It's really hard to resist, because if you are genuinely trying to respect people's time, you think, well, I've got to make it valuable for them. And so the chat I had with the client this morning, she said, you know, these are really busy people and they're dialing in from different time zones across the world, and it's really important they leave knowing their time is valuable. I've got to have them leaving knowing that we really made the most of their time. And so the mindset shift there was going, yeah, cool, get that. Just as a reframe, what if the most valuable thing you could give them was the space to get out of the treadmill for half a day and do some deep thinking on 2 of those issues? What if the most valuable thing that you got out of that was actually the space and not 12 different exercises? And it just takes a bit of this and that. Thinking you need to have all the answers, says Juliet. Yeah, because if you had them, you wouldn't need the workshop, mate. And so that's the framing piece again, of being able to go, oh, this one's curly, guys. We've all got some experience in pieces of this, but let's see if our collective brain has some ideas. And I guess he's not going off topic. Oh, mate, you and I are the worst for that. Great. We've got one thing we're going to solve today. Let's talk about 27 other things first. Oh, weird. We didn't get to the main thing. It's so easy to do. Samantha says people not reading the purpose of the meeting or the pre-reading and then turning up like, oh, what's this meeting for? I know. So we've got ground rules for ours, particularly virtual ones. We send them out and we say, these are the ground rules. So we need you here 5 minutes early. We need your phone off and you will get an email checking break at this time. These are the rules of this meeting. You have to come in being able to answer this question. Sometimes we use a tool for that, like a diagnostic survey or a quick email where everyone has to send in what their biggest opportunity is at the moment, or something they've grappled with in the last 2 weeks, or a prompt to get them, even if they're not going to do a lot of pre-reading, we want to get the headspace in the right place before we come in. And it's just everything we can do outside of the meeting to set up for success. Ensuring everyone is engaging and contributing. Yeah, and engagement looks different for everyone, right? So I think there is a misperception that to be a good facilitator, you need to be really high energy and really enthusiastic and really extroverted. And that in order for people to be meaningfully engaged, they have to look it. But I don't know what your thinking face looks like. Like if you guys have ever played an instrument or you've seen a photo of you reading a book, or your thinking face does not look happy. When people are really processing something, they're really grappling with it, they're engaged with what you're saying, they often have resting bitch face or resting grumpy face, or even just, you know? And so I had, what was it? It was a workshop in Sydney last year where I'd done this presentation about, it was about public sector strategy or something. And it wasn't a super big room, and I'd done this whole presentation, and I was glancing around, as you do, at the audience to try and catch the eye of the person who likes you, so you feel like you can, keep your energy up and keep going. And there was one guy sitting at the front, and I couldn't stop looking at him. I was thinking, man, that guy hates me. He is so unimpressed with me. Like, he just the whole time had this like stone surly face on, and I clearly remember his face and thinking, like, that guy, he's not buying it. I have not landed this at all. And in the break between presenters, I caught up with him in the getting a coffee line in the hallway, and he turns to me and goes, I really like what you said. I've actually just called my team and we've dropped a project based on what you were saying about prioritization. Thanks for that. And I went, what? Oh my God, not only did he listen, he listened so much that he left and did something. And his face wasn't, I hate this. His face was, I'm thinking deeply about this and what I'm going to do next. And so confusing engagement with energy is easy to do. Lynn Kazali, who is an amazing facilitator and runs great workshops on this stuff, often says high engagement and high energy are not the same thing. And I've really taken that on board, because as a presenter, or as a person, my personal style is to be very upbeat and energetic. And what that often results in is I'll spend a full day just pouring energy into a room and feeling like I need to hold the space for everyone to keep them excited. And then when I leave, I just go, oh my God, because I'm spent, right? Because when you're holding space by listening to people and answering them and responding and thinking about what needs to come next and trying to constantly do this, it's absolutely exhausting, and it's not always what you need. So high engagement and high energy are not the same thing. And accepting that people will drift away and come back is okay. There just needs to be a place for them when they come back. And we just need to be really clear about what the purpose is and make sure we're on track. So it doesn't actually need to be really fancy and really creative and really high energy. You don't need to run lame team building, throw a piece of string, put a stupid hat on, everybody's a something. For people to have a positive experience in a room, they just need to feel seen and connected to each other, to the ideas, to themselves, to you. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that don't require jumping around like the Energizer Bunny. And I think that can be quite reassuring, particularly for people who are more introverted but care deeply, that, hey, you can really hold a space for a room and take people on a journey. And you're not the only introvert in the room. And there will be a lot of people that appreciate you creating that space for them. And that's okay. Keeping people on task. Yeah, so everything's okay if you make it so, Anna. So if you get to say, all right, everyone, sometimes today you're going to hate me. It sucks because you come to these, you finally get the space for a good chat. You want to have a good chat about the thing to the person next to you, and I'm going to shut you down. And that sucks. I know it sucks. I apologize in advance. There's a reason I'm here. I don't have to eat lunch with you people. You can hate me at the end. In fact, this is an equal opportunity environment. If you all hate me a little bit at the end, like if I've pissed all of you off a bit, that could be a good result. So yep, sometimes I'm going to have to shut down a great chat. I'm sorry about that. But we need to get to where we're going, because I know that you guys want to leave much clearer on what we do for our COVID response, or whatever the topic is, right? And when you've created that permission for yourself, you get to stick to it. And you get to go, oh no, this is one of those moments. This is a good chat. We're going to park this. I'm going to write it down the thread so we don't lose it, but we're moving on. And actually having the confidence to just do that, I think, can be really helpful. Okay, I'm going to whiz you through what I think are the 3 key things to think about when you're running a meeting that matters before we wrap up for the afternoon. And I'm a big fan of acronyms. Who likes it? Who likes a good acronym or some good assonance? Yeah? So we're going to do, Kirsty's like, nah, mate, I am not down for this lame shit. I was just seeing her face. She's like, I've had enough of this. If you're going to condense it into 3 things starting with C, I'm leaving. Well, don't panic, Kirsty. We're going to do 3 things starting with P. Isn't that good? She's like, oh my God, kill me now. Hey, that are the elements of a good sticky idea. Memorable is one. And if you can connect to people the way people's brains work, you're away. So I'm going to talk to you about what you do before, during, and after. And I'm going to center it around 3 Ps just for Kirsty, because I can tell that she likes it. And if I can think while I'm talking about how to wrap it into an acronym that doesn't really make sense, I'm going to try and do that too. You know how you're like, and you know, you remember it because it says fun, which stands for facilitating under neurotic. No, I got nothing. Okay. All right. So I reckon there's 3 P's, Kirsty. And your first one is about purpose. And so this is about the work we do before the meeting. And this is really important. And when I say work before the meeting, I don't mean make everybody else do a lot of work before the meeting. I mean that you need to do the work ahead of time so that when you're together, it doesn't feel like so much work. Because when we do that, we've got real clarity. We have clarity about what we want at the end. People have clarity about why they're there, what they're going to get out of it. And you make better decisions about who comes along. Because if you know what your intended outcome is and you think, well, in theory, I could have everyone there, but actually I know 3 people don't know a lot about this and they'd like to be informed, but not necessarily included. So being able to make really strategic decisions at the outset that balance your need for diversity of input and right-sizing contribution to who needs to be in the room. Why are we meeting? What do we want to leave with? And it doesn't have to be a deliverable, but it does have to be a landing point, right? And with those things in mind, how do we set up to point everything toward that purpose and not the 6 other things that people are going to want to talk about? And as much of that you do, even if it's just thinking space beforehand, the better the result you get, right? The second P, Kirsty, just for you, I hope you're writing these down with a big colourful pen. I'll stop picking on you in a minute, is process. And so that's all about the engagement, and that's what happens in the room, right? And so putting in a lot of preparation and deep work and then holding it very lightly and being agile as you move through about what that process should look like. Knowing that this is your starting point, this is your end point, this is what you think people need in the interim, and then being absolutely prepared when you walk in the room to just throw it out the window. Like that's kind of the paradox, I think, that comes with this. And it's, what questions do I need to ask? My personal favourite, how short can I make this meeting? How can I make this the best use of a short space of time? Because I know that I'm going to find it easier to get quality input for 30 minutes than I am keeping people in here for 3 hours and taking them through a series of things. How can I pre-mortem grumpy people, technology issues, rooms that don't work, issues that have been unresolved that might pop up? How can I pre-mortem all the stuff ahead of time that's going to derail me in the room? And how can I prepare for that and design my process in a way that accounts for that? I think is really critical. Just moving around, put my things in the wrong place today. And how can I make this interesting? And that doesn't mean high energy, lame, cliche crap, but just, how do I make this interesting? People are in 20 meetings this week. They all look and feel the same. How can I do something that just people remember because it was interesting and it was a bit different? And your third P is about what needs to happen after the meeting. So that's about progress, right? So what we want from that is not just clarity about why we're there, not just engagement in the conversation. We need action. And if what we need is action, then we're not pointing our attention toward creating just a nice summary. We're thinking about how we appeal to people's needs and desires and fears. We're thinking about how we close the loop. We're thinking about what our call to action is and how we follow that up. And so those are different questions than just, what will we do for 90 minutes on Friday? So 3 Ps, purpose, process, and progress. And I think process gets a fair bit of attention, but I'm not sure the other 2 get as much as they should. And in a meeting that matters, we need to be able to ask all of those questions and answer them ahead of time because we value people's presence, which is another P, Kirsty. And I reckon I could come up with another probably 3 or 4 Ps, like participation. Can anyone give me another P in the chat if we're running on what are all the different Ps of good meetings? Just for Kirsty, so she can end up with 27 Ps. Probably. What? Okay. Potential. Yes, potential. We have so much potential. That's great. People, persistence. Oh, that might be my favourite one, Adele. You need to have a bit. Like, you've got to be a little bit bulletproof in these situations. So coming in and knowing, hey, it's not about me. Oh, pastries. Yes, pastries. Post-it notes, party pies. Pontification's a good one. Plan, pivot. Oh no, we banned the word pivot, Karen. We banned that. It's gone. Nobody's pivoting anymore. We're all dizzy. No more. Oh, I lost my thread on that one. I had a good P joke and I left it behind. Preparation would be a better one then, wouldn't it? Power. Yeah, no. Practice. Yeah, there's no substitute for time on your feet. Oh, I was about to say you've got to be a bit bulletproof. So taking your ego out of it and recognizing that while you're at the front of the room, nobody gives a shit about you. They just don't. Like, they don't care. They're very busy. They only care about what they need. And if you, so Matt Church, public speaker, has a line, replace nervous with service. And I really like that. I just think, you know what? It's not actually about me. It's not about my slides. It's not about what I'm doing. It's about what they need. So there you go. PJs. Oh, yeah. All right. We've hit 1 o'clock. We've actually hit 1:01. So I'm going to wrap up. I hope this was a useful webinar for you on Meetings That Matter. Because you took the time to come along today, and I'm so pleased that you did, we do have a special offer for you if you don't send it to all your friends. So for our Meetings That Matter workshops in Wellington and Auckland, I'm so sorry for all of you cool dudes in Australia who've come along today. There is an online vision for this workshop, and Nikki will tell you that she's working very hard behind the scenes, but it won't be there till November. So, you know, sorry, can't do everything at once, mate. But we are running a couple of these in person, which I'm very excited about. And we're doing one in Wellington on the 20th of August, one in Auckland on the 17th of September. And if you use the code MTM20, Nikki will chuck the Eventbrite link in the chat, then there's a whopper discount on there. So it's $12.99 a head. And with your code MTM20 that you're not going to share very widely, it's $9.99 a head for a full day's workshop with a copy of my book, From Strategy to Action, a workshop workbook with all the different tools and exercises and templates, conversations with a whole bunch of other excellent people that have to run meetings as well and are just as frustrated as you, and a day with me. We get to eat lunch together, maybe with pastries, because it starts with P. So if you are keen on that, you are more than welcome to jump on and use that. Just don't tell all your mates. All right. Well, this brings us to the end of our Meetings That Matter webinar. It was so good to have you all along. It was a great turnout, and you were all extra super duper engaged, which tells me that you are all also excellent facilitators doing cool stuff out there, and that maybe you've had enough of workshops that suck. So me too. Not all meetings. It was awesome to have you all along. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thank you so much. See you all again soon. Bye.